Okay, and we are back again with Raiders of the Past podcast. I think that this is episode 4, and
Four.
today it is going to be Johanna's turn to do a little presentation. We're going to do the missing head of Gobekli Tepe. So I know absolutely nothing about this. So if
Okay.
you would fill me and the audience in, that'd
Okay.
be
Well,
great.
we're gonna go straight out the
Oh well,
gate.
I don't know. I don't know. What have you been up to in the last like couple weeks since we talked?
Okay. Yes, we're gonna get to the missing head of Gobekli Tepe. Sure, but I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you guys if you're all joining in, and if you don't know what the Raiders of the Past podcast is. I'm Johanna James. This is Luke
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cavern.
I'm Luke Cavern. Sorry, I'm just moderating, making sure all this is working
Yeah,
well.
we are.
I'm still learning how to be a host.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
so bad at
slowly
this.
stumbling through this podcast world. But yeah, we just decided that like we're out here independently researching and making content, and we were like, hey, why don't we put our heads together and try and make something collaboratively? I'm over in London, England. He's over in where are you now? You
I'm
in
in
Texas?
San Antonio. Yeah.
You're in Texas, and we're just going to try and do this. So normally we do this on Mondays, but because of the 4th of July and you having some time off, we thought, okay, let's do this Friday. Um, Otherwise, I'm doing the podcast in like literally the middle of the night, so it's nice to do it at a normal time. Gonna say
Yeah, the goal is to get to the point where we're doing this around this time on Mondays.
on Mondays. That's
And
the goal for the year.
here within a few months we should be at that point.
And we encourage you guys, but we're also going to do the podcast live. So all warts and all, tech issues and all. Then there are a lot of tech issues while we're sorting this out. But we encourage you guys to get involved in the chat because that's the reason why we're doing it live, so that we can do this with you guys and you guys can feel like more of like a group
Yeah,
session.
yeah. Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. And the tough part about this is that, obviously because none of this is pre-recorded, all of the mistakes are all documented,
staying
you know?
in.
So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough, like, I don't know, I was just thinking about this lately. It's just this whole genre in general is tough because, when you first start researching and writing your own videos and speaking about things that you're interested in, you may not be, 100% a verified expert. And over time, you slowly progress over time. However, all of it is published, on a large or on a world scale for anybody to see and
Mhm.
ridicule. And so over time, the process improves, but you can always go back to the beginning and see the mistakes that people have made. I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about lately. But
Oh
anyways,
yeah, yeah.
on
It's
like
like
on like
you know,
episode 100, we'll have this thing ironed out.
yeah, we'll get smooth, once we get into the tens. But yeah, so just wanted to encourage people to, yeah, I can see we can see the chats live, so we're trying to involve you guys, and also it's like kind of a safe space because the history, alternative history world, it can be a bit bitchy. And I'm just not about that. Me and Luke are definitely not about that. And we want to kind of encourage everybody. It's all about chatting it out and sort of researching and theorizing because that's the fun bit. That's why I got into it because I love theorizing, thinking, what if, what about that? Let's look at it upside down, inside out. So we're going to bring every week one of us aims to bring like a topic. We're going to also run through maybe some like updates on ancient history news so that this can be a place where people can go, oh, this is what happened. um so there we go. So this week I chose my turn to lead, and I chose the missing head of Göbekli Tepe. I know Göbekli Tepe is like, it's probably the most done ancient site that everyone's talking about, but more stuff just keeps coming out of the ground, and it's really cool. And so I wanted to touch on an old story that I found when I last year got to visit Göbekli Tepe and was told the story um, by Klaus Schmidt's widow. Klaus
Mm,
Schmidt was the guy in the 90s that found the archaeologist that found the site and excavated majority of it in the 90s, and he unfortunately passed away, but his widow still lives in the town like near Göbekli Tepe, and we got to visit her house, which is amazing, and get like firsthand sort of stories, and she told us about the day that this somebody stole the statue's a head of a statue, which was really unusual because at the time it was the only human head that had come out of the ground, and somebody
Wow.
stole it, and it's still missing to this day. And then recently there is, I saw on my friend Ancient Architects Matt's channel, he
Yeah.
did a video about a new human engraving, because there's lots of animals at Gobekli Tepe all over the T pillars and in the enclosures, but there's like a full-on human one that's come out, and I'm like, okay. And I thought we'd just analyze them. So let's try and get into it. So here's the tech thing. I'm gonna try and present, right? So I'm gonna screen share. I feel like an
Yes.
absolute boomer. Press right, okay, hold on. Press present. Share screen. We're gonna go for it. I want to share. What do I want to share? Entire screen. Why not?
All right. Let's see.
Go for it. Okay, so I'm going to
Zion
shut.
42, man. Hey, thanks for the new membership. I appreciate that.
Right. So here's my PDF. Can everybody see this?
Boom. We're in.
Yes or no? I'm blind to the.
I can see it. I
You
think we're
can
all good.
see it.
Comments,
Okay.
are we doing well? You guys are gonna have to help us
Okay.
get
So
through these first batch of episodes.
if you don't know what Gobekli Tepe is, if you've been living under a rock, well, that's exactly what Gobekli Tepe was. It was an ancient, probably, well, now it's one of the most ancient temple sites that's been preserved amazingly up until the 1990s, in southern Turkey, near sort of the Syrian border. Yeah, found in the 1990s. They've only excavated about 5% of the site. And when they did the, what's it called? Age testing, carbon dating, they found that the enclosure walls around the T pillars date to at least 10,000, well, between 10,000 and 9,600 BC.
Wow.
So super old. And then they thought it was the first one, and they did like a massive PR campaign being like point zero, like the place where time began. And then since then they've discovered other Tepe sites, and they're older, thousands of years older. Whoops, that's probably the worst. Someone's got fired for that PR campaign. Anyway, so here is what we're looking at, one of the main enclosure sites. And the T pillars, if you look carefully at them, are humans, kind of human shape. So they've kind of got like these weird hands that look like Easter Island, very similar iconography to Easter Island, Göbekli Tepe, with the animals and the stonework. Sorry, my dog is chewing on really loudly on a bone, if anyone's wondering what that grinding is.
Oh, it sound what I thought it was firecrackers going off.
I'm so sorry. No, it's my dog eating a bone. Really annoying. Okay. Oh, what's that sound? Can you hear
What is it?
something? Oh, I just heard like it sounded like aliens landing or something. It was like, whoa. I was like, they're listening. No. So to point out the difference between the human-shaped T pillars and the new human engraving that's been found. So these are the human-shaped T pillars, which I think they look more like Predator, that kind of
Mhm.
like weird alien thing. And they've all got their hands exactly the same way with the long, creepy fingers and the human heads and the belts. And then this dude is the dude that they found that is like very clearly a human
Wow.
with a
It was
very long neck.
that reminds me of when you were in Turkey, didn't you find something that looked somewhat similar to this?
Oh yeah. So when I was in Turkey, we went to see Göbekli Tepe, and then we went out to one of the outskirt villages. And we got like a special permission to go and do that because recently this guy who was excavating under his house in this little village, and when he dug under the garage, he found this amazing sort of statue. It's about
Yeah.
3 foot high, maybe smaller, amazing condition of this like human man and all this sort of like Göbekli Tepe style animals. So they excavated it out. Turns out he's been living on top of one of these ancient Tepe sites. So they've started to excavate all under his house. Kind of annoying for him because now his house is kind of like owned by, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
the history, the government. Um,
yeah.
but anyway, so I went in to see it, and then I left because it was quite a small thing under his house, and there was a big group of us. I went in to see it, took the pictures, and I left to allow more people to see it. And as I was wandering out into the village, I saw at the front of someone's house, somebody had built this wall, kind of like a gatepost. They'd stuck a big stone from the ground as the gatepost, and they'd made like a modern wall. I think probably to keep chickens in or something. And I was staring at it, and then I suddenly was like, "Oh my god, that looks like a T pillar, like a Gobekli Tepe T pillar with the hands." And I can see the ribs because some of them have sort of ribs as well as hands.
Mhm.
And I was like, "No, that definitely is." Or I was in my eyes playing tricks on me, and I went up and was like, "No, it is, it is." And I started like screaming and shouting, and then more people came around. And then the guy from what's he called? Like the site manager guy was there and was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I think this is a T pillar that someone hasn't clocked it what it is, and they're using this 12,000-year-old carved stone as
Mhm.
like a gatepost for their little village farm."
That's
And
great.
I was like, "Do you know about this? Like, do the authorities know about this? Because this should be preserved." And he was like, "No, nobody knows about it." So I got really excited. I'd made my first archaeological discovery that was going to go down in history. And then I was told that Hugh Newman from Megalithomania had discovered it himself like
Mhm.
a few months before. So Hugh found it first, but still I give myself a little bit of credit because I did find it without knowing about Hugh finding it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Well, and I think that that's the fascinating one of the fascinating things about, I guess, this little lane of archaeology or studying ancient history that we're in is that, Johanna and I are not, professional archaeologists that are going to be leading dig sites and things like that. But there are all these little things that are out there that go a lot of times unnoticed, or
Mhm.
aren't really publicized. Like using the word discovery a lot, that can be that can be like a volatile word because I'll go down to Central America and have discovered something because I put it on film and publish it, right? But then people will come and say, "Oh, well, you didn't discover that," whatever. There's this wide open lane for people to travel around the world and see things like this, document them, and put them out to the public.
Mhm.
That's not happening even with, professional archaeologists. And maybe somewhere in some very obscure paper or website somewhere, you'll find the same thing. But there's a huge vacancy right now for people like Johanna and I, Ben, Snake Bros, whoever, to travel around the world and publicize these things because the vast majority of people just never see this.
I would never have seen it. If I wasn't already into this, this wouldn't come up on my feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but once you know, you know. But so for people who are just listening audio and you can't see what I'm seeing, I'm showing a picture of it's a T pillar that's kind of half in the ground, half sticking out the ground. There is very clearly like a kind of not it's bigger than a stick man, but it's definitely a man with but what's interesting, right? This is when I saw this, I went, okay, so if we're saying that all the T pillars are humans because they've got the arms at their side with the hands that go to their kind of crotch or belly, and you count the ribs and you count the long fingers, I was like, well then what's this? Because this is a human, but the hands aren't at the side. They're very clearly like kind of I don't know, in walking like John Wayne,
Yeah.
his legs are apart, not together. His hands aren't by his side touching his crotch. It's like a different shape. So then in my head, I was like, wait, are the T pillars supposed to represent something else then? And we've
Mm.
just assumed they're humans because they've got hands and feet and ribs and whatnot. But to me, this is definitely more human. And I just wondered whether or not artistically they were deliberately different. Because maybe they were representing maybe not like humans versus aliens. I'm not going there, but like like elders versus common folk or
Sure.
kings versus I was like, I feel like there's two very different depictions of humans going on.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I totally agree. Well, you see the same thing in the Olmec world. they'll depict some people having these long, elongated skulls, some people having these, fat, round faces, and then some people having these jaguar kind of snarling mouths. And it's the same in Egypt as well. They'll depict people in certain ways depending on what type of class they are or how
Mhm.
important they are. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so this is just an image of kind of where they found this human guy because all of the other T pillars that were supposed to be humans are over in the sort of main enclosure. And then here is okay. So again, I'm going to show these are all of the
Wow.
human heads around Göbekli, Karahan, and the new site that they found under that man's house. So you've got this new dude here. We're going to call this guy John Wayne because he's standing
Okay.
like John Wayne. And then you've got this guy with the beautiful lips. This is sticking out of a rock face in Karahan. You've got Eartha Man, who I always thought the Eartha Man statue was like a tiddly little kind of 4-inch
Mhm.
statue. This guy is like 6 foot tall. This
Yeah.
is big.
Yeah, yeah. Who was it that showed that at Cosmic? Because I was shocked. I always thought he was going to be like this big.
I think it was it the Snake Bros? And they were
It,
showing oh
yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah. I
No, no,
mean,
no, no, no. It was why am I forgetting his name? Robert Schock. He's tall.
Was it
And
Robert
that's
Tuck? Okay, okay,
and
yeah,
that's how I know how tall the Earther Man is, because Robert Schock, if you didn't know, I didn't know until I met him, he's a
yeah,
tall guy. He's a
yeah, yeah.
very
He's
tall
probably like
man.
6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, he's a tall dude, and he was stood next to Earther Man, and Earther Man, he looks small next to Earther Man. So Earther Man
Yeah.
maybe 7 foot tall.
Wow.
Um, then you've got at the top, this is the little 3 foot dude that was found under the man's house, which interestingly was flanked with the two lions, which is an image that we see all throughout like ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, being flanked by two cats or two lions, like the Sumerian kings. I should have put some more reference images in there, but it's a very common motif. And then it's weird though because
Interesting.
Göbekli Tepe, and also they carbon dated under the guy's house, and it came out to around 9,600 BC
Wow.
from what from the matter that they could, the organic matter. They couldn't obviously date when the stone was carved, but basically like when it was buried, the last occupant was around 9,600 BC, which matches the last occupants of Göbekli Tepe. But then there's like a thousands and thousands of years in time and space between 9,600 BC and like Mesopotamia
Yeah.
around
Oh,
like
wow. Yeah.
4,000, 3,000 BC. You
Well, yeah. I mean, think about that. It's. I mean, it's almost the same amount of time as we are from Mesopotamia. You know what I mean?
right?
You think about 3,000, 4,000 BC, that's 5,000, 6,000 years ago. It's another 5 to 6,000 years pushed beyond that before you get to the Tepe sites, which is just
Who's who's
it's
preserving this imagery, this
yeah.
idea of a central person with the two cats? Like it's odd. It's like we're missing a few well, we're definitely missing some big chapters of history for sure, but especially in that weird line between linking this culture and the ones that we really know
Yeah,
about.
absolutely.
And then the bottom picture is this massive headed guy who's got like loads of ribs. And it's interesting. I haven't got a picture from the side, but it's odd because this guy that's coming out of Karahan Tepe, brand new. I did get to see him in person, but a guy with a gun told me not to put my camera on him. So I said, okay, I will do that. But he from the side, from the back, he's got this kind of like headdress thing that looks a little bit like an Egyptian headdress. It's a bit mad. And he's got this kind of beard thing that looks also a little bit like the Egyptian beard.
Mhm.
And it's very
Oh, that is
weird,
interesting.
right? I'm like, it looks a bit similar, but they can't match because one's been buried under the ground for thousands of years, and the other one, I'm like, where is there a missing link or a missing some sort of culture that was able to preserve some of this imagery and then pass it down? Um, Also, some human heads that have popped up around Göbekli. There's this dude that's in this like stele with I don't know what that's a bird and that's a
Oh, okay, now I see it.
oh, well, yeah, it's kind of on his side.
Mhm.
Um, so that again, this is making me think. Well, these guys, yeah, like they do the human faces kind of straight on and like that. Um, and then the T pillars, I don't know, it just made me think that they're 2 different they're trying to
Well,
represent 2 different things, not necessarily the same humans.
one thing I always think, if you scroll back up, so
Yep.
this right here, sorry, one slide down.
One slide down. That one?
This right here, I mean, think about like um, the artistic style of this is amazing. How I don't even, what animal is this? This main animal that's in the center.
I'm thinking like kind of it looks like some sort of wolf maybe?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's
like a
or a
wolf that I'm
bear?
sure that they have wolves up in the mountains out there. It's
Yeah.
okay, so you have this wolf and you have this bird next to it and this other four-legged animal to the top left, and the
Mhm.
way that they all kind of they fit together like puzzle pieces, but the style of it looks so nice that it's like something you would see on a shirt today. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
How long does it take for artists to get this good at carving something into the rock? And another thing that I should highlight here is that it's not like they're carving the image away into a rock like a child does. They're carving the rock away to reveal the image from underneath, if that
Yeah,
makes
it's like
sense.
yeah, it's like reverse drawing. So, yeah, it's their reliefs, which is
And
even
so,
harder to do.
yeah, I mean, it can't be easy at all.
Not that I've
And
tried.
if you'll go up one more slide,
Yeah?
um, you know, you have that kind of style, but then you also have this style of carving the rock away to reveal this head with this guy who's got the puckered lips, and
Yep.
then you've got Urfamin, and you've got the other standing statue. It's just amazing that a culture can have this many different art styles, and that they are not considered to be like a traditional civilization. You know what I mean? This takes a
Yeah.
long time for people, and I would think that you would have to have some kind of sedentary life where you're farming something, you're living nearby, or you're living at the site, because you would these would be professionals that are able to do something this well.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, you know, how many generations does it take to get to a point where you have all these different art styles and you're able to carve rock to look something like that?
Yeah, like we haven't found yet. We haven't found the kind of the prototype between the cave paintings and these amazing detailed
Yeah.
statues and reliefs and like yeah, we're missing a thing. So okay, so they're the human heads that are currently in and around the tepes. And then the missing head, the first head that ever came out the ground. So this is an article that I'm showing here
Oh wow.
from the Turkish newspaper because it was a big thing. So obviously Klaus Schmidt was excavating and then they hit this human head that was down buried deep in one of the walls that they've made. And what was interesting is it wasn't in its original place because the walls that are built around Göbekli Tepe recycle and reuse bits of broken T pillar and bits of old statue. So if the walls were part of the design, the original design. This is why I don't think the walls were a part of the original design at all. I think they were a later Neolithic thing to try and either preserve, reuse, recycle, or sort of hold up the site. So this statue with a human head and something on top. I think it was a bird. It's like a bird on top of a human head. This is just like a bit of recycled statue that makes up part of the wall. Anyway, they found it and were like, "Whoa, this is the first human face that's, a human statue that is older than like." Well, so the oldest human statues at that before that were like, I guess Eartha Man. I don't know if Eartha Man had been found at this point because this was in the 90s, but
Mm.
anyway, found the head. It was all great, and then they went on a lunch break on the site, and then in the lunch break, they came back. The head was missing. Someone
Oh
had
no way.
someone had nicked the head and and they froze the site. They called the army. The army came in because they take it so seriously in Turkey. You can't even take an arrowhead or a bit of rock or anything. They will put you in prison immediately. Warning to any tourists with sticky fingers. And so the army came in, froze everything down. They like went through everything. They did a big hunt around the village. Whoever it was that took the head, like bolted and hid it really well. But they're a bit stupid because you can't move something like that. Even on like a black market, it would be ridiculously hard to move the only human head from Gobekli Tepe. Like now
Wow,
nobody would touch it, but it's still missing. So if you know where this head is,
that's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe somebody stole it, and then when they realize how we know that it was noticed that it was missing,
Mhm.
they either hid it somewhere or yeah, like tried to get rid of it, and then maybe there's some little old lady that's got the statue in her garden using it as like a flower pot or something, and she has no
Yeah.
idea. It's like potentially 15,000 years old or something,
Oh,
whatever oldest.
that's so cool. Do you have any idea like the size of this head?
Oh, okay, here we go. So this is like I don't know what the this sort of ruler thing next to it is, but you can see like it's got like some sort of bird on its head. But
Mhm.
I think it looks very much head size. If
Mhm.
that makes sense. Like it's kind of like human ratio. On this image here, this is other things. So this is just to show that they were reusing bits of broken pillar and statue to make the walls that they dated to 9600 BC, which is they attribute the entire site to being started,
Mhm.
around that time. But I personally think the statues and the T pillars are so much older because it would take a couple thousand years or a couple hundred years at least to get for stone to break down and to be in disrepair. We know how long stone lasts for a very long time. It's got to be at least a couple hundred years, couple talking thousand years. But yeah, here's just an image. It looks like a pair of dentures or a piece of. This is obviously some sort of animal's teeth,
Mhm. Ah, that's really cool.
and they've like shoved it in the wall just as a spare brick. Um, and then this was interesting. I hadn't seen this because I didn't see this in the sort of snakes are a big theme for Gobekli Tepe, but this is the back of a human head. Did the ears amazing, but it's got like a massive snake on this guy's head, and I was like, "That's amazing." Um, I think that's the back of this statue here, this sort of like totem pole statue thing.
Wow. Look at that.
I
There's
mean,
a difference. There's a different I've never seen this before. There's a huge difference, and that's not like petrified wood, that right?
no,
That's
it's still stone. It's coming out.
yeah.
It's
Wow.
part of what's sculptural fragment of a.
That is amazing. Look at the guy at the bottom right of that, what is he doing? It's like he's sitting down working on something.
He's holding some sort of I don't know, like
Does that
monkey.
look like a pot to you? A
It could
pot or
be.
like a vase or like he's
It
working
could
something?
yeah, he could be holding but then he's got there's legs coming out of it, which makes you think, is it a baby? Or I don't know, but then I don't know. I'm not the best at working out what the
Yeah, yeah.
symbolism is, but
Well,
anyway, this
I
is sort of a 101 of all the heads
so
around
so that
Göbekli
that
Tepe.
little stick thing,
Yeah,
archaeologists they'll just hold that up next to something, and it's a reference as to the size of whatever it is you're looking at. So each one of those bars are roughly about 6 inches probably. So the head,
okay.
at least the main part of the head is probably
Maybe
maybe a
12
little bit more
inches.
than a foot long.
Yeah. So okay, pretty big head. Well, I love how they've got like the eyes and obviously this is
Oh, that's amazing, yeah.
so if this old bit of of a statue had broken off pre 9600 BC, because it had to have been an old piece of crap for them to go, why don't we just throw it in the pile and use it to start building this wall to hold up the T pillars, right? Um, so I imagine the state it must have been in 9600 BC, like 12,000 years, for someone to
Mm,
go, yeah, recycle it. I can't fix it. It's
yeah, yeah,
it's too old. And then, yeah, shoving it in. And I think that's why the bird or whatever the creature is on top is like so worn out. Maybe it's like an eagle on its head or I don't know.
yeah. Well, and the whole thing is oh, okay, so okay, I'm kinda seeing the bird now. So it has
So
a
you see,
body and it has its wings behind it?
these are the wings, I think, and then this is the
Yeah.
head, and then it would have had a beak. It's very weathered. And
Whoa.
considering this thing has been buried underground, it must have been weathered when they used it as a brick in the wall. Do you know what I mean? Because the
Mhm.
weathering on that is so extreme, and this is at the bottom of this is at the bottom of the wall.
How
So
bizarre is that?
it has to have been super old when it
Yeah.
was used as a bottom brick.
And
Um,
what do you think that teethed thing is?
Apart from granddad's dentures, I don't
Uh,
know. It's like it's very much maybe, yeah, like some sort
wow.
of snapping rock.
It's crazy. It's crazy seeing. Well, it kind of reminds me if it's okay. So here's another thing. If it's put into the wall like that,
Mhm,
maybe if that was on a different I'm just totally speculating, but if that was on a different statue of some kind, when a later culture comes or the same culture, however much later comes and builds these walls to repair this site or keep it up, they
mhm.
must take one of those statues and think, well, rather than burying it, why don't we like shove it into this wall so it still looks cool? What's crazy is that something like that happens when you shove the greater part of a block into a wall and it's got a head or some kind of image on the outside,
Yeah.
that's called a tenon head. And tenon heads like that are all over. Well, you see some in the Olmec world, some gigantic tenon heads, but you definitely see them in Peru, and it's just amazing that you see this kind of imagery, some very similar architectural ideas poking out from different cultures around the world.
Well, some people are saying, cheeky lizard or dragon.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, feel free to throw in, it's anybody's guess at this point.
Let's see. Let's check out some of the
What?
comments. Love you, Poppy Luke. You were late. Bad Poppy. Okay. I
True.
will not be late again. Thank you so much, your mom, for the big two. Point well taken. I will not be late again. Let's check out
Absolutely.
Zion Super Sticker. Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you,
Uh,
Zion42.
Chris Bribiescas? Bribiescas. Are
Rubiescas.
Maya temples older than Egypt's? And what's the connection between the Americas and Egypt? Well, first off, thank you for the big 5 USD. Are Maya temples older than Egypt's? Well, the very origins of so here's the thing. In Egypt, they would build a site and then later cultures or the same culture but thousands of years later would build continuously around it. In the Maya world, they would do that sometimes, but they would also you would have this smaller pyramid, and then when the king died, his chamber that he so they would entomb him into his chamber, and then his son would build another temple on top of that, live on the top, and when he died, he was buried there, and then the pyramid just grows with every generation. Those oldest pyramids or the pyramids that we found, the oldest bodies in them are around the very oldest bodies are anywhere from around 400 to 500 BC. But we do have evidence of Maya kingdoms, Maya civilization going back to 1000 BC. However, in Egypt is like incredibly old. So I think it's we have evidence that Maya people were living in caves 10 and 20,000 years ago. So the Maya people have been around for forever. Uh, Definitely as long as Egyptian civilization. But as far as the temples, I mean, we're talking. The Egyptian temples are so old that people are saying that they could potentially be far older than they really are, and there's some good arguments for that. So I would say that Egypt's temples are much older. And
Go on.
sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna interject one thing, like, for what we know for sure is that, some of the Egyptian temple sites, so not that the temple themselves
Mhm.
are that old, but the sites are older because we know that they
Yeah,
used
sure.
to, um so, like, the Middle Kingdom would build on top of Old Kingdom sites,
Yeah.
and there is, like, there's lots of evidence to say that they did something called it's like it's the oh, I forgot the name of the stone, but basically there was like a ceremony, a seeding, that's it, temple seeding. So say I wanted to build a temple in the Middle Kingdom, I would choose an old site and I would keep a piece of the masonry of a big block of not marble, but of granite, and I would put it into the ground and I would build my temple over it, and it would be like the kind of lucky seed of growing your new temple because all of the sites are not by accident, they're all aligned to something and they've got very ancient alignments, and there's all this stuff about activating the building of temples in ancient Egypt. So they're connected to ley lines and hotspots of energy. um the Karnak
Mhm.
temple, for example, is on this crazy hotspot of energy where the trees literally grow. They don't grow up, they grow along the ground. It's really weird. So there's something happening,
Interesting.
um, like with nature and the energy fields of like the world. It's not by accident. So a lot of the sites, even if some of the stuff um doesn't date back like further than maybe the old kingdom, um I
Mhm.
bet all my money that the sites that there was something there previously and they've recycled and reused it. So
Sure, sure, yeah. You know,
super old.
that's interesting of what you say about, were you saying it was Karnak Temple that how the
The,
trees
tr-
grow in a strange
the
way?
tree, yeah, the trees are at Karnak. The trees grow kind of like along the ground. It's really weird. They kind
Wow.
of come out, but they don't go up. They sort of like, ugh, it's very weird. You're like
And
something's.
is this something that, like, when you were there, will the I mean, even the local Egypt guides, do they think anything of it, or do they, brush it off, or I'm just curious.
Um, yeah. So the what did they say?
You
Oh,
may
this
not even have that conversation while you were
because
there,
you
but
know I saw that it was the first time I ever went to Egypt that I saw the weird trees that go along the ground. Um, And I think there's, like, a lot of lore goes on around them, like, it's sacredness and special
okay,
trees and
okay.
it's definitely noted, but Karnak specifically as a site, so there are certain sites in Egypt that have what I call like up energies and down energies. And you can definitely go into somewhere and go like, "Ooh, this doesn't feel this feels kind of heavy or it feels kind of like creepy." And then you've got sites where you go and it feels like someone's giving you a shot of adrenaline and you just feel like you
Mhm.
can breathe maybe 2% more in your lungs. And so Karnak is an up energy site where you're like, it's like re-energizing you. And then sites like the Giza Plateau it's a super and you and I feel like it would be hard to be, like, super sad on the Giza Plateau because the energy is like, "Woo," it's, like,
Wow.
fizzy. Um, and I think that we're humans, our brains are all electromagnetic, and I think we can absolutely 100% sense when we're going into zones of, like, because it's physically reacting with us and our cells and our, whatever we're doing. So there's science behind it. It's not all a lot of woo woo is actually scientific. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I definitely think this is something that I've been saying a lot is I think that there are things in science that are I think that there are other levels of science that are thus far like can't be tested and can't be proven, but people, that you can feel things. Like they can't really fully explain love, and so or humor, why people find things funny, but we do.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely think that there are aspects to science and to our reality that can't be proven and are thus far untestable. The reason I wanted to bring that up was I liked. I find that really interesting about the way those trees grow at Karnak, and I loved. Yesterday, I watched your video again over Sekhmet, the statue,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was just thinking there are so many other aspects of Egypt other than the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Osirion, the Serapeum, and the unfinished obelisk that are really fascinating. That I think that the audience as a whole, people that love this stuff, oh, I should throw the vases in there as well. Although the vases are new and they're really cool. Well, I say new, but it's kind of new to pop culture.
New old.
Yeah, yeah. And but I think that that is something that you should make a video on. At some point, some things that are like that. I think there's a lot more mysteries in Egypt that people would love to hear about that aren't the regular 5 or 6 that we always hear about.
Mhm.
So let's see. Let's see. All right. Garito, thank you for the Big Ten. I'm curious to see if your first trip to Egypt will change your view on the structures, builders, theories, connections to other sites around the world. Wow. Um, There's a lot to unpack there. Curious to see if your first trip to Egypt will change your view on the structures, builders, theories, connections to other sites around the world. Well, I definitely think it's going to. I definitely think looking at Egypt in videos and photos is going to be a lot different to experiencing it in person, and it's probably going to be. It's going to be even more so pressed upon me how impressive these sites are. Um, and I think that probably probably I'm going to become even more open-minded to I don't even know, explanations that maybe my brain thinks seem crazy right now, but I see it in person and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, wow, now I understand." I'm looking at it in person. It was the exact same thing when when I held the vases for the first time. Matt Bell, friend of Johanna and I, he owns a bunch of these vases. And before I went to go visit him in Florida and I held them in person, I didn't understand the fascination. I didn't understand the need for like some kind of ancient lost technology to make them. I couldn't understand it until the first time I held them. And so I think that probably my first visit to Egypt, which is actually now going to be a few months sooner than I thought. I just got invited to help film a project in Egypt in October. This is like as of 2 days ago. So I'm headed there in October, and yeah, I'm sure my viewpoints are going to change a little bit there. What about you, Johanna? I mean, when you first went to Egypt, did it, what was the effect that it had on you?
Oh my gosh. Sorry, my light's falling over. Um, yes. So, obviously, it's really useful following channels. Anyone that like vlogs and photos and like Ben from Uncharted X is probably, I would think, he's the best, closest thing to just walking around Egypt you'll ever get if you don't go there. But then going there in person, and yeah, it's like it's allowing yourself to feel the senses. So it's not just eyes. It's like it's being in those zones of high electromagnetic activity. And we know for a fact that places like Karnak have got they are emitting like way higher electromagnetic.
Mhm,
I've seen them. I've seen the photos of the readings. So yeah, it's being able to experience that. Plus, if you're like me, when my imagination gets set on fire, um, just the scale of it, like you think you know how big the pyramids are, and then you actually get to see them, and you're like, holy! And it puts. I know when someone says like, "Oh, moving a 1,000-ton block is really hard," and then when you stood next to the 1,000-ton block, and you're going, now that's not just hard. That's like we have a major problem with
mhm,
physics and how like why is everybody not stopping what they're doing in the world and trying to work out this problem?
mhm,
Because it hurts your brain. It is so big. The seeing the scale of it, the craft of it. I just have a huge amount of respect for the people in the past. These
yeah,
civilizations, the indigenous people of these locations, I'm like, "Oh my I feel so uncool and so untalented." And I was like, "I will never be as talented as a stonemason from the early dynastic Egypt." It's depressing, but inspiring at the same time.
yeah. Well,
So
it's crazy. I just did a video on my YouTube a few days ago called Egyptian megaliths you've never seen before.
mhm,
And at the end of the video, basically one of the things that I talk about is that I think that whether or not some of these structures are 12,000 years old, whatever that knowledge is of how to quarry, cut, transport, and carve and then polish, these megalithic uh, monuments or these megalithic aspects of these temples, that was 100% preserved all the way to the end of Egypt, 30 BC when Cleopatra dies. That knowledge of how to do that was still there because it's directly after that when Cleopatra, when she dies and Rome annexes Egypt and Egypt becomes a part of the Roman Empire. It's directly after that that Augustus visited Alexandria and he saw these granite, marble, and limestone buildings that he thought, Rome is so powerful. We have all this money. Why is it being dwarfed by the grandeur of Alexandria? And so they quarried a lot of the buildings in Alexandria and then rebuilt them in Rome. And they learned from the Egyptians how to make these beautiful buildings. And the way we know that is the Parthenon in Egypt. These 100-ton columns that sit underneath the Parthenon, those are Egyptian gray granite from Aswan, and it's perfectly cut and polished cylindrical columns that are 100 tons apiece that they quarried in Aswan, carried all the way up the Nile into the Mediterranean, across the Mediterranean, all the way to Rome, and then erected them. That alone is insane. I just it boggles the mind, and that's one example of
Mhm.
thousands of monuments like that. Just absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm just quickly scanning in the because in the comments here because yes, we are doing this live. That's the reason why we chose to do this because we wanted to make it an event that everyone can turn up to and get involved in. So I was just checking that we've kind of addressing everybody chiming into the chat. So do throw some 100-ton columns, someone's asking, or 1,000-ton, 100-ton.
Yeah, yeah, 100 ton columns on the Parthenon. There was 60 to 100 tons. Those are kind of like gross estimates. But yeah, 60 to 100 ton columns on the Pantheon. And that's according to a book that I have called Roman Egypt.
How would you do it today? Some gigantic crocodiles asking. But that's so this is with Egypt, right? So when the first time I went to Egypt at Karnak Temple, they're constantly doing preservation work and reconstruction work in Egypt, which is a debate whether or not people should touch it or not. That's up people have different opinions, but they're trying to. And what was hilarious is that they broke a crane. So they brought in this huge crane to try and move part of a statue or something. And they broke the modern crane, and it was just this like broken crane. And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" They were like, "Yeah, they broke it when they tried to move it." Um,
No, no,
so
sorry. These are solid columns. Yeah, they're solid columns of gray granite
or like one,
on the
yeah,
Pantheon.
because I mean, it's like weird stuff like what you learn because I never thought 10 years ago that I'd know anything about ancient column making. But it
Mhm.
really seems to be that the oldest columns that we find in the world are the biggest and the ones that are cut all out of, they like to do it all in one go, which is
Yep.
crazy because if you get the perimeter wrong on the one side, it's like damn it, Peter, we've ruined the column. Like you get kind of one go at this when it's all one thing. And
Yeah, yeah.
they all have to be to spec. You can't have like a skinny column and a fat column. Like it all has to be the exact same manufacturing process. And they did it, and they did it in one. And then the later columns tend to be replicating the style of the first ones, but they're done in little sections, like a stack of like polo mints or something.
Yeah,
Um
yeah. They'll do like
so
drums
yeah,
that'll
drums at them, like, and then they shave them all down together, which is beautiful and amazing, and I couldn't do that, but, yeah, so it's interesting that, like, when you look at the timeline and, like, the older column stuff is so well, these ones where you said were 100 tons, but there are even bigger ones than that, I believe,
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Tanis.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, oh, Tanis, that those are crazy huge. There's a little thing that I added at the end of that video I did the other day. That I was saying when the Romans are looking at all of these Egyptian monuments, and they are now essentially getting these Egyptian architects to teach them how to do this because they want to export
Mhm,
the same architecture back to Rome. And what I was saying is, in 30 BC, when Cleopatra Cleopatra dies, the city of Alexandria is conquered, and now the Romans are just now learning how to make things like this. About 250 miles south, at the Saqqara necropolis, there are solid granite columns laying in the dirt that have been laying there for the last 3,000 years. When the Romans are just now learning how to do it.
man.
There are columns that look just like that sitting in the sand for 3,000 years leading up to that. That's how far ahead, at the very least, the Egyptians were, in comparison to all the other cultures of the ancient world. That itself is mind blowing. And the reason that these so when you look at Egyptian columns, as far as I know, you're not going to find single piece limestone or sandstone columns because limestone and sandstone is not strong enough to hold its own weight. Like if you have the column and you erect it, the
It'll
weight
snap.
on the end of that, it'll snap sandstone or limestone. So it has to be granite because granite is strong enough to hold its own weight. And so the very, very earliest Egyptians were aware of this and were making columns out of solid granite, which is just mind blowing.
I'd love to be there the day that they worked out that you couldn't use sandstone as a column. Someone would spend hours carving it out, and they try and get it up, and it just snaps, and you're like, "Dang
Oh,
it!"
I'm sure that had to have happened. Yeah.
Make a note, Bartholomew, sandstone does not work.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So where are we as far as the Gobekli Tepe presentation? Is there more, or was that,
Oh,
or
no,
was
no, that was the conclude. We've veered
okay?
off
Okay. Okay. I was just making sure.
wildly.
I was just
We've
making
veered
sure.
if everyone's still here. But yeah, in a nutshell, there is still a missing head of Gobekli Tepe, and they've recently uncovered a new human statue, which makes me think that the T pillars are not depicting humans, or if they are depicting humans, there is a differentiation between the T pillar ones that are stood like that with touching their belt and their crotches, and the ones that are stood like John Wayne, like
Yeah. Mhm.
stick man. So you got the stick men and you've got the like long fingered crotch touches. That's weird, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, like what's the difference between them? What were they trying? Yeah. So I'm thinking, so this is me just like throwing a theory out there. I think that Göbekli Tepe, if I was going to have a stab at it, I would say that it was a kind of like a knowledge school, university type thing,
Mhm.
and they were making these T pillar arenas and encoding them with animals and which potentially could align to stars and
Mhm.
just sort of encoding. It's like a library slash university learning sacred school. And I think that maybe the people were kind of seen as like gurus, teachers, wise ones, and potentially like the T pillars are trying to depict like the higher ones, the wise ones, the teachers, the gurus, and then you've got like the laymen who are just like on the.
Now, do most people agree that Gobekli Tepe is not a site that people were living directly on, but it was a site that people were more or less making pilgrimages to? Like it was a place where activity was happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I don't know if they found. I don't think they do because also, Göbekli Tepe is on top of a hill, so it's not really the place for houses.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
um, because you got to go quite a way up. Like even today, you get driven up there as a tourist to like really to the top, so you can get out. And when you look around, and the same with Karahan Tepe as well. You're looking out and you're like, "Whoa, we're up high! Like we are so up high."
yeah, what's the horizon look like? So if you're up on top of that hill and you're
Yep.
looking down, is the sky pretty big around you? Because 'Cause I'm
Oh
just thinking
yeah.
about
Oh,
if
you'd be
it's
looking.
like an astronomical observatory, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful, and we were like when we were spitting ideas at Göbekli Tepe because the floor of one of the enclosures is waterproofed. So they put something on the floor, like some sort of kind of like ancient cement type thing,
Mhm,
like an ancient kind of flooring, and it made it waterproof. And all the way around, it's kind of like a lip, like a kind of seated. It's like a small seat that's all the way around the arena. I'm gonna call it the arena, and it did look like so we were laughing like maybe it was an ancient spa, people come up for a spa
mhm.
day. But someone pointed out they were like, what if it was to fill with water and then when it was still, you could stargaze and it was like a
Oh,
massive
yeah,
mirror. And I was
yeah,
like, yes, love that. Um, and then it
yeah,
was, it
reflector
was,
pools. It's the that is, like, the easiest way. Okay, so the purpose of a reflection pool, one of them would be it's if you're laying on your back looking at the night sky, you have no point of reference when things are changing. Like you can tell, okay, the Big Dipper is upside down today compared to how it was a few months ago or something.
Mhm.
A reflection pool, on the edges of those pools, you can make markings and you can say, okay, this is where this constellation was yesterday. Oh, look, it's different. Look how much it's changing. Look how much it's changing. And it'll almost act as a clock, and you'll be able to see eventually you'll be able to see astronomical patterns and you'll be able to figure out your night sky. That would be the purpose of a reflection pool. One of the interesting things about that I think is like, how does someone ever get to the point where they realize that they can do that? You know, how
Mhm.
many thousands of years does it take for people looking at the stars to realize if you make a reflection pool, you can follow the movement of stars? So even though these sites are 9,600 BC, 10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago, how many thousands of years does the thinking that led up to this go back beyond that. Anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, no, no. We're just spitballing here, but that was kind of where I left Gobekli Tepe thinking. I was like, I think originally it was it was just freestanding T pillars and kind of arenas, either for people to gather for like kind of like a lecture thing, or they were using it, yeah, exactly for stargazing, and encoding information, encoding symbology, encoding like all that stuff. So I think that was there, and I'm thinking that it was there pre 9600 BC, pre when the walls were made,
sure.
pre Neolithic pottery people. I think it was from before. And then I think that around 10,000 BC, or yeah, that's when I think that the Neolithic pottery people found it, and when it would part fallen over, a bit like if someone found Stonehenge today and we're like, cool, why don't we keep Stonehenge up? Why don't we build little like mud brick walls around it and keep it stood up, and we'll repurpose it and we'll use it and whatever. Because yeah, there's an enclosure called enclosure F or E. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's
Mhm.
got no mud brick. It's just the original enclosure with it hasn't got T pillars in anymore because they've fallen out and gone, but it's got like the bolts in the floor, like where they would have been, and that in my mind it made me visualize and go, yeah, that's how it originally was. They were supposed to be these freestanding. It makes no sense. Why bolt them to the floor so that they can be freestanding if you're then going to whack them in a wall? Why don't they all be in a wall then? Like,
Yeah.
why are some of them freestanding and some of them not? Because I think some of them still were, and then yeah, so
Yeah, I'm
I
totally on board with the walls being added later
I
because
think the
um,
walls are
one of the
Neolithic pottery.
walls one of the walls disturbs one of the pictures or reliefs of a person, doesn't it? Like you can see where they pulled away the wall and there's a person behind the wall and they've stacked the wall up next to the person. Have you seen this before?
I've seen the ones where some of the T pillars that have been that it would have taken them utterly ages to carve, and then they've
Mhm.
like they've wedged it in the wall, or they've you can see where they've restood some of them up. They've made a wall and then restood it up, and it's not quite fit right, so they've had to like throw a few more rocks in. The fact that they've
Yeah.
reused so many parts of it in the walls themselves means that they were not part of the design. I mean, we've gone over this. So in my mind, for anyone to suggest that the walls were part of the original thing, or that they were made at the same time as the T pillars, I'm like, well, you're just stupid. So
Mhm.
it's no, I don't. I You don't have to be a really professional detective to work that one out. But yeah, I'm thinking like a couple thousand years before, because if it takes a couple thousand years for it to get into a bad condition,
Sure.
um, that's kind of where rule of thumbing it at the moment.
Now, have you seen these? I saw Hugh posted something recently that I think he's in England right now, and he's at this site that has these P-shaped pillars. Have you seen this before?
The P-shaped pillars, no.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to say that they are at least 2,000 years older than Stonehenge, but he didn't call them P-shaped pillars. I just noticed that they all looked like the letter P.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look up Hugh
But
Newman's
look
P-shaped
like
pillars.
they look like they're huge limestone, pillars. They look like they've been weathered a lot, and I
Mhm.
think he was saying that they go back to 7,000 BC, something like that. But yeah, it's set up like an observatory where it's a circular, it's a collection of circular, I don't even know what you would call them, like, not a plaza, but, they're just these, what word am I looking for? They're circular monuments, I guess, of stones,
Yeah,
sort of like Stonehenge. And so
like
obviously,
standing stones.
yeah, yeah, and so obviously that makes you think of the fact that it's an observatory, and so at least that's what it makes me think. And it's amazing that you see that you see it at Gobekli Tepe. You see a very similar site that the name is forgetting me right now. The name is escaping me, but it starts with an N. That dates back to about 7,000 BC or 5,000 BC in Egypt, and it's in Upper Egypt. And there's another hinge site like that in Egypt.
Okay.
You have Stonehenge. You have this other one that's in England, and there are other sites like this. And I think it's definitely indicative of this extremely ancient um, culture of astronomers, or an astronomer's culture that is interacting with people. And eventually, if Gobekli Tepe, if they are the first people to build these astronomical observatories, over time and over the course of thousands of years, other cultures are seeing this and learning it. And yeah, I mean, it's like evidence of this prehistoric ancient astronomer culture that's disseminating throughout the world. Another thing that's strange is that you see there's another Amazonian Stonehenge as well. I don't know that there is any actual direct cultural connection at that time, or maybe it's a cultural connection that, lasts over the course of thousands of years. I don't know. But I just find that fascinating too, that there's all these little things, like I was talking about with the tenon heads, like I was talking about, or like I'm talking about with the circular standing stones. I love that, those little gray areas of, well, how did this idea get from here to here? Are they actually two independent inventions, or is it the influence of one culture on the other?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. It's I feel like my favorite period to look into, and where I want to focus a lot of my more research, is this weird gray period that is between the end of the Tepes, the Karahans, and the Göbeklis, because that all kind of got folded into a time capsule, and
mm,
then we are missing all the way up to the first dynasty in
mhm,
like my head. We're really not sure. Um, and so many I'm looking at I'm keeping my eye on the news of like ancient sites and being more ancient discoveries, and more stuff has popped up in the last year about ice age, like humans being where we never really thought they were, and now we're discovering that they were there. So for example, in it's in near sort of in it's near Saudi Arabia, sort of around sort of Dubai, that kind of Bahrain, that sort of um, chunk of
mhm,
the world. They've recently found, because they didn't think that people were living there, and they found a settlement, an ice age settlement, and like evidence of humans being there. That was like just in the news this week. So, and I just keep seeing ice age, ice age, ice age. And so humans are being found further than we thought they were. And also remember, like, we're not looking in the seas, we're looking on land. So this would have been ice age people up in a higher altitude than we are
yeah,
today. Much more likely that people would have been living down at the water sources, the
yeah.
mouths of the
And
river, the
living
seas.
living in places that, like, can't become an archaeological site today.
Exactly. So we'll just kind of like never know unless the seas sort of drop or whatever. But and I'm noticing as well, they're saying like, yeah, like ice age settlements. And I'm like, this is so weird because the word settlement was never really allowed to, because I was really of the understanding that nowhere was settled until like in the last 6,000 years. That's
Mhm,
when cities were built. And then now there's like there is a 10,000-year-old settlement city in Turkey, um, that dates to like 8-9,000 BC. And so I was like, wow, people were really living in old towns, and settlements are coming out, ice age settlements. And anyway, so we that's just one thing that I've noticed, just having a little look at, that things keep going back to ice age. And if you didn't guys know, most people probably do, but in case you missed it, they've recently done a study to find out that the Nile River, where that was in the ice age, and there was a whole ancient branch of the Nile River that went right up and around where the pyramids are,
mhm,
which
mhm,
means that we are like one step closer to working out how they built it all, because you can see, and also the fact that originally there would have been water on the site. So
mhm.
one that really strongly suggests that they traveled the stone by water, so they had methods and means of traveling it through really heavy stones through water.
Yeah.
And
And
also
a lot of stones. Those the
oh, a
granite
lot of granite, yeah.
granite that they had to get to Giza. I mean, that's just
Actually, yeah,
crazy.
I've got a little I'm just gonna quickly share my screen again.
One thing I've wondered about that, I've been reading more about ancient cultures moving, these megalithic blocks on, tell me when, I'll add your
No, no,
screen.
go for it, go for it, go for it.
One thing I've been thinking about with these ancient cultures moving these megalithic, blocks along, boats, is, and I think that other nautical archaeologists share this as well. One thing I've wondered is what if the boat, to carry like an obelisk on, because some of a lot of the obelisks in Egypt were carried by vessels, they believe, and we even have some depictions of obelisks being carried on boats. And one of the things I wonder is, what if the boat originally started on land and that's how they load it? And then you have this really shallow like canal that opens up into the water, and you're able to just slide that thing out into the river rather than trying to, how do you take an
Yeah,
obelisk?
you can't load it. You can't load it onto the it's too wobbly. Yeah, you'd have to slide. Um, I do know that I think a part of the missing puzzle is that Egyptians loved Lebanese, I think it's Lebanese cedar wood, and that it was
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
gold to them, and they would
yeah.
trade with Lebanon. And obviously, Lebanon is known for Baalbek and the biggest stones in the world. So the dudes who were living in Lebanon obviously had learnt the hack of how to move and cut massive stones. And Egyptians were trading for Lebanese cedar. And
Mhm.
because one of the properties of Lebanese cedar is one of the most buoyant woods that there is. So there might be, to a degree, some physics around Lebanese cedar wood, and like airbags, or if you could make sort of like leather or pigskin airbags, you could create kind of like flotation with
Oh wow.
this Lebanese cedar wood. So that was an idea that got sort of that I looked at, and I thought, yeah, like it's feasible. I'd have to speak to someone who really knew their physics, um, I think that there's something in the connection. That's why the Egyptians were so obsessed with trading Lebanese cedar wood, because of its buoyant properties, and
Mhm.
perhaps that was how they were like
Yeah.
getting it there.
Yeah, and
Um, yeah,
ridiculously strong wood too. I mean, the
yeah,
Bible talks about how strong cedars of Lebanon are as well.
yeah.
Okay, so what we're
Uh,
looking at right now.
so just to come into land before we come into land for today's episode, just because, yeah, I guess it's the discovery of the Nile River, going literally right up to the Giza Plateau in and around Pyramid, Sphinx, and all of that, and how it changed around 4,000 years ago and started to retreat. Um, So, yeah, I just was wanted to, like, put some of this in, and I didn't really understand the graphs. I'm showing some graphs here for anybody who can't see, listening in the audio, just audio only. But, I'm thinking here on this little graph here, you can see that before, um, this is the Old Kingdom, and before how, wait, let me see if I'm reading this right. There's an old kingdom drought. So this is like around the 4,000 years ago, where, yeah, the decreasing rainfall in the Sahara. And so it would have been, but you can see that pre-dynastic in this time again, that this like mystery epoch of time that we just sort of like, it just was like nothing happened. And then suddenly everything happened
Mhm.
within like one generation. We're like, Um, this was abundant Nile floods, really high rainfall in the Sahara, the water level, um, going up. And yeah, and something changed around 4,000 years ago, which is when all the Sahara started to go out. But so the water theory up and around the Giza Plateau. Oh, I haven't got my images. I haven't got my images up around here. Maybe if I come back out. Hold on, can you see this one?
I can.
So here is the modern River Nile, which is on the right side. And then you can see on the left side, this is where the ancient River Nile would be.
Wow, wow.
And the little red dots are old kingdom sites. Um, and basically, yeah, the old River Nile runs literally alongside, parallel, all these original old kingdom sites and the ancient branches of the River Nile. So water, and then there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on right now in the kind of tech uh side of the world. There's been a paper released this year to say that low energy nuclear fusion reactions can happen in cavitated water. So basically, in a very small nutshell, you can get low energy scientific reactions, and chemical transmutation can happen, but you need water and and frequency and moving of water. Um, and personally, I think that all under the Giza Plateau is channels and channels, and to move water. And I
Mm,
think that I think inside, what when we crawl inside a pyramid, the 3 foot by 3 foot, 90 meter drops, and I think they're water shafts, and
mm,
I think that water was very much to do with the purpose of the site of Giza. Water was it was humans
mm.
carved out that site to move water around it. I'm sure of it. And
Interesting.
I don't think it was for purely religious or ceremonial. I think it was functional. And there's
Sure.
like pieces of the puzzle, and I'm looking at the stuff over here going, chemical transmutation and low nuclear stuff is being proven in when you move water. And then there's like, yeah. Um
Well, I've
and then
always
it yeah, go on.
yeah, yeah. I've always thought that the alternative explanations to the usages of the pyramids or the purpose of them, I've always thought and I've always liked the alternate explanations that have something to do with benefiting Egypt. You know, whatever their purpose was, I'm just whatever their purpose was, my belief is that it was something to make Egypt rich and wealthy and keep Egypt elevated above the rest of the ancient world. You know, they have the Nile. The Nile is the only reason that Egypt exists. It has the most fertile, abundant soil in all of the ancient world. They are the grain factory of the ancient world. They fed the Mediterranean. That's why Egypt was so rich. That's why Egypt emerged before basically anybody else. Mesopotamia emerges around the same time, but they don't have any of the, well, I mean, not any, but they don't have the wealth that Egypt does. And, and so whatever its purpose was, if, you know, an alternate purpose other than just being tombs, even if they are tombs, they're not just tombs. Um, but I like alternate explanations that have something to do with benefiting Egypt. So if it's like a ram water pump of some kind, or you know, I've seen Land of Kim talk about them being like alchemical factories or something like that. I
Well,
like
yeah.
those sort of alternate explanations, something that's helping Egypt and pushing it forward and making it powerful. And you know, that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, now we know for sure categorically that in the pre-dynastic times and up to the very early first kingdom, um old kingdom even, the first dynasties, now that we know for sure that there was water and a lot of water flooding up and around it, yeah, I think it has to now categorically be part of the process of these
Mm,
sites. And I think that we know that they were 100% later on used as tombs, thousands of years after they were built, or maybe not thousands, but no, yeah, thousands. And I think that, yeah, that those things that we climb through, like you'll see it, the minute you climb inside a pyramid, I think it's going to change. It's going to change your whole view. Um,
yeah, I
the
think so.
the the shafts that you have to crawl down, they're not designed for humans. They're
Mm,
not at all designed for taking things in or out, or for humans to travel. We now use them, and we've like fitted them with lights and steps and handrails, and even with a handrail and a thing, it's still 3 foot by 3 foot.
mm,
It's a water shaft. It's they're going in, and also they drop. And what you don't notice, and nobody would tell you, is that originally all the water shafts that come in, or the shafts, they drop into these pits before you go into the chambers, which they either filled them up with sand, or they were filled with sand, but they have been excavated at some point, I think by like Petrie in the 1800s. But now they just put a wooden board over. So obviously you'd have
mm,
tourists like dropping down into the shaft pits. But but yeah, it was Land of Chem, who was his channel. He was talking about these, that there is a function to having the pits at the bottom. They are designed for for liquid.
mm,
There's yeah, there's a point to them, and they're not for. Why would you have a pit that it's not like deep enough that it would trap somebody? So they're not like booby pits for someone
mm,
to like come in and like, ha, you're in this 6 foot dip that you can very easily get out of. But there is a form and function to them, because otherwise, why else would you have them? Why would you spend the time creating these granite pits at the bottom of these shafts? So people aren't even seeing the full picture. What I'm trying to say is, when they go there, they come down, they're so excited that they're in a pyramid, they don't even realize that they're walking over boarded over sections, and that there's like a kind of puzzle piece missing to the shape of what
yeah.
you're inside. And it's to the chamber, to the antechamber. There are like shafts and pits, which if you were filling with water, it's all part of the process of like filling it up to a level. There was a function to it anyway. So I'm really interested in function, and people always speculated, well, maybe that maybe it has something to do with water, and then now we know, oh yeah, probably did. There was water everywhere before the first time, before the
Yeah, and
archaeology.
another thing I think is strange, and then we'll address the chats here in like the last 10-15 minutes. Um, One thing I think is weird is, I'm interested in seeing them for the first time in person. Is when you go up the Grand Gallery or you go through it into the Queen's Chamber, or you go up and into the King's Chamber. Those little, like you said, 3 foot by 3 foot uh, little tunnels. One thing I think is okay, if the pharaoh's body is mummified, um, what are you carrying his body in to get him through the pyramid and into his chamber without, why would they make those little chamber, or why would they make those little tunnels so small? And if all of his treasures are going to be kept in those chambers, you look at Djoser's pyramid. There is a giant, some kind of black rock. It might be diorite, or like black granite, but he has a gigantic statue of himself that was buried, I think, inside of the pyramid. And
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the labyrinths or the tunnels, chambers that are underneath Saqqara, those are all, when you're walking through them, you can tell that they're made for people to be walking through them. Is that right?
Yeah, because you can stand up.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
they're human size. Oh, I wish I'd done it. So I actually bought it and I didn't do it because logistically it didn't work, but maybe the next time I go to Egypt.
Mhm.
I bought a life-size blow up human from Amazon.
Oh my God.
Like and yeah, and I was going to take it and I was going to wait till I get into a pyramid. I was going to blow it up and I was going to try and drag it through for science purposes, just
Uh-huh.
to show you how logistically difficult it would be to take a small human-sized body, and this would be without the weight of a body as well. This was just a
Mhm.
blow up per
Sure,
thing,
sure.
to show how disrespectful, hilarious, and just like problematic it would be to take a human size. You can't fit more than one person side by side. They're 3 foot by 3 foot. You have to crouch down. You can't stand. You have to kind of awkwardly crouch, but you're at an incline that is faster than humans should be able to travel. Like you'd slide without the sort of bumpy steps that they put in now, you would slide at speed. So you would smash the body if it got to the bottom. You have to sort of drop the body, I guess. Um, Also, you it's impossible to climb. They're not access tunnels. They're not at a rate where you can climb in and climb out. They're really steeply inclined. And also they have it's not as simple as a case of like, oh, there's a tunnel going in and there you are. You go down for 90 meters and then you stop, and then that would be where the booby trap not booby trap pit is, where that like kind of water collection pit is, and then you go up and then you can go up 30 foot and then you turn it. It's like it's a workout. They warned me when I first went in the bent pyramid. They were like, "This is a lot. So if you struggle physically, like, take a minute to see whether you want to do this because once you start, you're kind of have to continue." Um Athletes have struggled with this and I was like, "All right." It is. It's you sweat your back off going through a pyramid. It's not for the faint of hearted. But yeah, the idea that you then have to crawl through another sort of 50-foot tunnel, and then the access to the chambers, the burial chambers, is no more again than like half a meter. You'd have to shove them through. It'd be like, sorry, sir. Scar apology, sir. It'd be like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It is the most disrespectful thing you
yeah.
could ever do to a human body would be to be
Yeah.
drag it through a pyramid.
Well, and the other thing to consider is that if these are built to be the tomb of a pharaoh, you're not moving the body of a king. You're moving the body of a literal god. And I just don't know how you would feasibly do this in a way where the Egyptians, with everything that they built, how they would build this in a way where it's feasible to easily get your god king's body up into his chamber without falling over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
So there's
yeah.
a lot there that's really
Also,
strange.
In the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, and then also they found out that there's now another massive void, potentially other chamber or a grand gallery, right? So they think that they'd worked it out, the procession or whatever, but that procession's a load of bollocks because there's now a whole other void the size of a jumbo jet inside the Great Pyramid. And the whole reason when they were like, well, why are there two chambers? And they were like, oh, because they started building the queen's one and then realized it wasn't big enough. So then they built the next one. And they're like, okay, well, if that's the final one, but we've all agreed is the final one, then what's the big sister upstairs? What's
Mhm,
that? And everyone's like, we don't know. But they're also as well, interestingly, there is not even forensically anything for grave diggers to get.
mhm,
Like there's grave robbing, and obviously you smash the pots and you get the gold and you take the thing, but there would be forensic evidence everywhere of stuff.
mhm.
Smashed shards, bits of glass, spilt perfume. There isn't anything even forensically inside any of the pyramids. There's not a shard. You'd find something at some level of bits of crap, and there's just nothing. They found 2 inches of salt
Yeah,
lining
well,
the
Saqqara, I mean, there's remnants of all of Zoser's stuff everywhere, right?
In the what, sorry? In Saqqara?
Yeah, it's Saqqara under that pyramid,
Oh,
you
yeah,
can you
full of
have
stuff.
glass
Full of
pots and
stuff.
everything. Yeah.
So I think Saqqara is a really good example of a place that was definitely used as a tomb,
Mhm,
um, for sure, but, like, the Great Pyramid, I don't think there is 0 evidence it was ever used as a tomb. There's not forensic evidence of anything being removed, that there was ever a body there. The idea of a body going through the shaft is so funny and so disrespectful. I'm like, it's the opposite. Again, and if you can make something that's that big, that's the size of 20 buildings, like, well, 20 British buildings,
yeah.
you could make the incline a nicer, more respectful ride. You could
Mhm.
if the yeah. Um I'll just wait till you get inside one in October and then come back to me and I'll be like,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah.
You
Oh,
feel
that's
like
gonna
you're you feel like you're climbing inside a big old machine, don't
yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah,
If
because
I
you're
have good
sliding
if
down the
I have
water.
if I have good enough internet, we'll try to do one of these episodes, while I'm there.
Yeah, well, actually, internet in Egypt's pretty poo, but we'll try. We'll give it a go. We'll give it a go.
Okay, okay. Let's address some of these supers to close us
Oh yeah,
out.
let's chat to the people
Um,
who are with us tonight. This
alright, so
Friday evening.
let's see, alright, Fu Man Blue, can you read this one for me?
Whoa. What you're doing means the world to some of us. Keep it up. Well, we're passionate. This is our passion. So we're happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard in some ways, and it's a lot of work, sometimes to force yourself to sit down and work on these things, even after you go work your day job or whatever else it is you're
Yeah.
doing. But you guys being here, looking up and seeing that there's 683 people with us today,
Are there?
is,
Hello.
is wild.
I
Um,
forgot.
yeah, yeah, is
I forget
wild.
we're going live. I'm just chatting about this. Like, this is fantastic.
And you guys mean the world to me, and I'm sure Johanna feels exactly the same way.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for the donation. Yeah, I I'm just lucky. I can't even believe I was looking at one of the discords the other day, and there was some people in there having a conversation about. I was on a podcast that came out yesterday, Next Level Soul, and there were some people in there just saying that they liked that the work that not just myself, but people like Johanna and Ben and the Snakes were doing, and I was just thinking like, how fortunate and lucky I am that to even end up in this situation where I'm friends with so many of the people whose videos I would just when I'm at my day job, I would go put my AirPods in and sit down and eat my lunch and watch these people's videos, and now I'm friends with them and working with them, and it's really cool, but none of that would be possible without anybody watching. So thank
Yeah.
all of you guys.
And this is just the beginning. Like we're definitely like the newbies on the
Yeah.
block in
Oh
terms
my
of
god. Yeah.
this there are some proper legends who've been doing this for like 20, 30 years. But really cool because we're joining at a point where like so many people are tuning in and like starting to notice and starting to get involved. And yeah, so much stuff's already been discovered even in the last 3, 4 years. So crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. See, your mom, hey, thank you so much for becoming a member.
You.
All right, let's go
Oh,
down.
somebody just asked, is there a Discord? We don't have a Raiders of the Past Discord yet. We're still brand new to the podcasting world. Um, Not gonna lie, I don't know. I am part of a few Discords, but I'm not like a massive Discord user. So I'm gonna have to like sharpen my Discord
Yeah.
skills before I
I,
run
I
one.
use I use Discord for gaming. That's about it.
Okay.
But I'm sure I saw a comment earlier that somebody said that they would love some Raiders merch. We're definitely going to do that
Yeah.
at some point. But we're gonna make it something nice, and we'll put together a Discord of some kind for sure. Because
Yeah.
I know that there's a big section of the audience out there that loves that.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Go on.
sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, the plan is obviously we're starting like slow and just
Yeah.
casually making the podcast, but we would love to build it, concentrate on it, and like our big plans for like long term is we are trying to pitch a show. We would love to try and get proper camera crews out, and be able to produce something a little bit more higher end. And so yeah, like, and we'd
Yeah,
also like to do
that's definitely gonna happen.
meetups. Talking. We are regulars at Cosmic Summit, but definitely looking to do other meetups or going out to sites with people. That would be
Yeah,
something we'd be keen to do.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, Decky69, thank you for the big two. Glad to see you join the fray of ancients. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's see. Lance Morris. Uh-oh. Name three Nirvana songs, Johanna.
The what?
So Lance Morris, I don't know if you can see the comment I put up. He
Oh,
donated
right.
35 czar.
Smells
He's
like Teen Spirit. That's what I
um,
remember from when I was 13.
mm,
Um, oh my god, I could like sing you.
something in the way is my favorite. Is my favorite one.
I could sing you a bunch. When I was 12, 13, maybe 14, and I was just getting into like skateboarding and rock music, um, that was when I liked Nirvana. And I saw this t-shirt the other day and it reminded me of my little 13-year-old trying to skateboard self. And I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
cool. But I don't believe in that name three songs of a band. Dude, if you like something, you like something. Meh.
yeah. Agreed. Okay, Raceland Mahiri. Uh, $5 donation. Thank you very much. Those trees are just tired growing along the ground once.
No, they're not. They're massive. They're big, healthy trees as well. And what's interesting, just to skip back, if anyone's joined now going, what are we talking about? Trees. At Karnak Temple in Egypt, there is an area, and only in the temple area, not outside it, just in the temple, some of the trees grow out and they grow along the ground, and they're big and they're lush and they're green, and they're like alive. They are, but they just don't grow up, they grow along. I'm gonna try and find an image somewhere. I'll post it maybe
Yeah,
on
yeah,
YouTube.
I would love to see this.
I'll send yeah,
All those little weird things about Egypt, I think people find that just as fascinating as everything else. There's
yes.
so many little things. At some point, we'll have to do an episode on the Sekhmet statue anomaly. I'd love to hear more about that.
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
I'll bring that up maybe another we'll do a whole, Raiders on the
yeah,
second
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Okay, Raceland, thank you very much for becoming a member. We got Zion again. I have to ask, did you know? Well, I'll let you read this one. I think this one is directly at you.
Okay.
Is you,
Um,
Johanna?
oh, sorry. I have to ask, did you know Michael Weatherly, Tony from NCIS, was on your Gobekli Tepe tour? He spoke on your video and your YouTube. No, well, I didn't know Michael Weatherly was gonna join the tour until I was on the tour. Actually, embarrassingly, I'd seen NCIS, but I think ages ago when I was very young, and it was on the first night of the tour, and I got introduced to Michael, and they were like, "Oh, this is Michael," and I was like, "Nice to meet you, Michael. What do you do?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm an actor." I was like, "Oh, me too. What have you been in then?" And they're like, "No, Johanna, he's like a big actor." I'm like, "Oh, well, lovely." But very good friends. Me and Michael, we went through a very intense experience in ancient in Turkey. I didn't actually put it in my vlog because I was doing a sponsored video and I wasn't allowed to, but I can say now because this isn't sponsored. We were actually caught in a there was a gunfight between some Syrian
Crazy.
refugee families, near Gobekli Tepe. There was a big joke that we were gonna, be careful, you're near the Syrian border, and but we felt very Turkey's beautiful, and Turkey is a non-gun owning
Mhm.
country, and I did feel very safe through Turkey, but this just happened to be some freak gunfight between some warring Syrian families, and we got caught in it. And me and Michael Weatherly were in the restaurant, and we were like hiding behind a table, working out what we were going to do. Um, and yeah, he's lovely. And Michael's visited London with his wife, and I went out to dinner with him and his wife and
Ah,
my
so
partner.
cool.
So I'm chums with Michael Weatherly, and he's just as lovely in person as he is. And he's a big fan. Turns out he's a big fan of my channel and wanted to come on the tour. So
That's
very
so
cool.
cool. That's so cool. Well, not the experience you had, but
Not the
just
cool, not nearly getting shot in
yeah.
San Lofa, but yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the way that a lot of these countries are, is they're mostly perfectly fine for you to visit as long as you take the same precautions that you do anywhere else. Um, but the locals there will be violent with each other, but very rarely violent with tourists.
Oh, yeah, so just to say, because some people do say like, "Oh, I'm a bit scared to go to Egypt." So Egypt, there has not been like a harmed American or English, tourist in Egypt in like 20 years or something. Like they are very respectful. They rely 90% on the tourist industry. So everyone in Egypt is so lovely to tourists, and you feel very safe, and they are so used to tourists. Turkey is especially like southern Turkey, it's the tourist industry is a lot newer, so there isn't quite the same like established tourism that there is in Egypt. But yeah, but the actual Turkish people were so lovely. Like we'd go into the villages, and the kids would come down, and they'd made us fresh bread, and they didn't even want any money for it. They just wanted to like share their bread with us, and the little kids were running up to it. Was so Turkish people absolutely lovely. Yeah, we were unfortunate to get stuck in the middle of like a gang fight between um these Syrian families. And yeah, for someone who doesn't live in like I'm not around guns. I'm from England, so that was traumatizing.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a lot.
All right, Jeffrey Weathers, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Why are there no hieroglyphs depicting the construction of the pyramids or how they cut, transported, and manipulated the quarried granite megaliths? Okay, I'll go first. So,
Go for it.
my own theory as to why they didn't depict this is because Egypt knew that they were elevated among the rest of the world around them, and there's a reason that we don't share the methods by which we produce nuclear warheads in the United States because it elevates us above the rest of the world. Sorry, Johanna. And I didn't mean it like that, but I just mean there's a reason that you protect things like that.
You protect your secrets, your national security secrets.
Yeah, and so I think that the Egyptians are holding that, uh, close to the vest, and they're not going to disclose that to the rest of the world because why would they want the Mesopotamians learning how to carve? I mean, the Mesopotamians are living on limestone blocks, and there's granite out there just like there is, everywhere else in the world. But why would they want the Mesopotamians to begin doing that? And why would they want anybody else to be elevated? So these are national secrets, essentially, that they closely protect. And I think that at the end of the Old Kingdom in Egypt, when we really see a lot of a lot of megalithic stones, we don't see them as used as commonly in Egyptian architecture. I think that when they fall into the first intermediate period, Egypt is kind of turned upside down. It's ruled by some foreign leaders, and there's some invasions. I think that either that knowledge is lost, or it's buried, or something like that. So it seems like they lose that, even though we definitely know that it's preserved to some extent all the way up to the end of Egypt. Or maybe their economy just can't afford to do that anymore. But anyways, I think that these are things that they would not openly like for other countries to be able to travel to
Mm,
Egypt, learn how to do it, and then bring that knowledge back home. That would be my
that's
theory.
what I think. Either the actual answer to how the pyramids were built was so boring and that nobody ever thought to like immortalize it in stone because they were
I
like,
love
what? It'd be like, why would somebody detail how to build a brick wall today when everyone's like, "It's dead boring. Why do we care?"
Yeah, sure, sure.
Um, or I think it's more interesting actually why there are no hieroglyphs on these structures,
For
considering that
sure.
they are on absolutely everything else. Like I think it's more interesting why there's no decoration on anything um when it's literally the aesthetic of Egypt is to cover everything with beautiful, ornate, things. So I find it more interesting what so yeah, there's no hieroglyphs depicting how they were made. You do have, the ancient texts talking about limestone transportation, or to the
Yeah.
Giza site, but then also, to be
Marrer's
fair,
Diary, I think that's what it is.
there's been so many phases, I think, of reconstruction and recycling and renovation that you can't totally rule out that there wasn't. We know that the old kingdom sites, the Sphinx and some of the old kingdom temples were renovated in the old kingdom. So I yes, there is Giza texts, like there's like an inventory of Tura limestone that was being lots and lots of it, and
Yeah,
the pyramids are made of Tura limestone, but um, it, it's hard to completely rule out if there wasn't a lot of. Personally, I think that the Old Kingdom and the Fourth Dynasty was a bit like the Industrial Revolution
yeah,
that we had, and I think that they had an industrial revolution of their own, and I think that they were repurposing, recycling, and renovating a lot of the sites, which is
yeah,
why all of the carbon dating around the Giza Plateau and the ancient sites all kind of aligned to the same 100 years, because I think they weren't being built one after the other. I think that there was an established base of some sorts, ancient temples of some sorts, and then I think that they were renovating massively in the early dynasties. That's where I would say. So yeah, so maybe that then I do hold space to say that there's no hieroglyphs depicting how they did it, because maybe they didn't know how it was, because
sure.
it was people had, I wouldn't. I'm of a civilization, and I don't know how half the stuff. If someone said, "Johanna, it is up to you to describe exactly how an iPhone is made," I'd be like,
Yeah,
I don't know. So, yeah. So I'd say they didn't know. It was so boring they didn't care, or they didn't do it. Got to be one of
mhm.
those three.
Alright.
Or the
You wanna
one
read
you
it?
said that it was
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
secretive. So it's one of those four. Take your pick.
Alright, you wanna take this one?
I always wonder what Akhenaten meant when he said old magic doesn't work anymore, or similar.
Mhm.
Paraphrasing there. Were the Egyptians starting to build the sectioned columns around that time? Well, Akhenaten is later. He's
New Kingdom.
New Kingdom. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because he's around the time of what would be kind of Moses.
Mhm, yep, yep.
The Akhenaten story aligns around the kind of Moses, let my people go type of thing. And so yeah, he was a lot later, and he was old school because he was like, yo, I want to go back and do the one God. And
Mhm.
um yeah, he was like, you don't need to access gods through the sacred holy of holies in the temples. It's all inside you. Very modern day spiritual, really. Akhenaten. What a legend. But yeah, so the question is, the old magic doesn't work anymore. Yeah, I definitely think that there are, if certain things had a function. So say that there was like a little situation set up on a site where you could move water around, and you could create a either a chemical reaction, a low energy nuclear fusion reaction, which they're showing that you can do now at very low temperatures. If there was something that was part of a process of that, and you remove one piece, or one piece gets broken, or one generation forgets how to turn the thing on or how to set it up properly, then nobody knows how to do it. So yeah, you'd be left with like mystery, old lore, old magic. I mean, what is science but magic, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, especially that's kind of another thing is I think that, as far as what you're talking about protected secrets is I bet you astronomers, were probably paid pretty heavily by the king. And I bet you the king or the pharaoh, could come out and he could make proclamations as to, oh, this time tomorrow, there's going to be this happening in the sky. And it's because, Ra or Amun told me so, and then it happens, and then everybody sees the divine power of the king. That's not really addressing this specifically, but I was just talking about secrets that nations have.
Yep.
Anyways, we keep going.
So yeah, I think that I think that definitely by Akhenaten's time, if you think about it, the first dynastic pharaohs would have been like ancient gods. It would have been the
Yeah.
same as like in England, we're looking back to King Arthur now, same time frame.
Yep.
In fact, probably even more than that, but we're looking back to King
Mhm.
Arthur and being like, "Ooh, King Arthur and the Round Table and Merlin and the wizards." We've already like there probably was a dude called King Arthur who like did some awesome stuff like
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
Dark
yeah.
Ages. And he's been memorialized in wizard lore and all this magic stuff. And yeah, I think that the same thing could have happened by Akhenaten's time. They're looking back at the old the dudes that did the industrial revolution of the fourth dynasty and going, ah, the ways of old. Yeah, you don't know how something again. Like imagine looking at an iPhone, but you just have the iPhone, but you don't have the battery thing,
Oh
and
yeah,
you'd be looking at it being like, wow, what did it do? Or like,
yeah,
because you don't have the thing that powers the whole thing. So yeah, we're definitely looking at like maybe 2/20ths of the puzzle going, bet it's a tomb. Bet it
agree.
was a piece of religion.
All right, Dingo. I'm traveling. Well, first off, is that 14.99 Aussies, or would that be
Yeah.
AUS? Um,
Australian, I think. Australian.
yeah,
Oh,
because he's
dingo.
a dingo. 'Cause he's a dingo. Yeah.
Good eye, mate.
Uh, okay, traveling to Rome soon. Key to see the Egyptian obelisk. You should make a video about them, Luke. By the way, huge fans of you both. Considering starting to study anthropology because of your videos. I say you should go for it because the reason I switched to anthropology, even though I always loved ancient history, my my original degree was creative media, marketing, advertising, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't even pass my classes because I hated them. And so I told my girlfriend at the time, who's I'm still with, Lauren, we got married last year. Um, I told her that I'm going to fail out of college if I don't do something that I love doing because I do not have the discipline to spend hours of my time studying things that I don't like. So uh, enrolled in anthropology, and it took me 2.5 years to graduate, and I just destroyed school. My last 2.5 years of college, and I was like a straight C and D student all the way through high school. And it's just because I was forced to study things that I didn't care about. So, anyways, I say study anthropology because you're going to like it. And as far as traveling to Rome, keen to see the Egyptian obelisk. Yeah, you're gonna be amazed. I'm sure that they're gonna be absolutely massive. The one that's in the Circus Maximus, I think that's you may know this, Johanna. I think that it is the other obelisk that Hatshepsut commissioned in front of Karnak Temple. Is that right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the one that was taken to Rome.
Yeah, and the one out that Karnak has no. Yes, no, Karnak has the biggest obelisks that are still standing. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
lots that are not still standing, but the one that's yeah, but I think its twin is the one that Rome took and
the
was
one
like,
that's sitting in Rome. Yeah. Um,
there's a
so
smaller
yeah,
one in London, but the Rome one's way better.
Yeah, and as far as making videos on the Egyptian or Roman Egyptian obelisks, definitely one day I will do that when I go to Rome. That's something I want to. This year, I'm really focusing on traveling to sites and making videos while I'm there, rather than just making video essays from home. Um, I'll probably get to Rome probably 2025. I think I'm gonna make a I'm gonna
Put
make
it
a
on the list.
out there.
Okay.
Sasquatch gifted 10 Loot Caverns memberships. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Congratulations
Nice.
to the lucky 10 people, whoever you are.
I didn't know that you could do that. That's cool.
Uh, yeah, I'm still a novice to this as well.
You can give
Um,
people memberships. Genius.
let's see.
Christmas presents all around.
Raceland again. Great Pyramid. You put the door on your side, right, Bob? Rick? Steve?
That's right. I get the joke. You get it?
No, I don't. I don't.
So like you finish building the pyramids because they've got no entrances, and you'd be like, you put the door on
Oh,
your side, right, Bob, Rick, Steve? Nobody put
yeah.
a door on.
That's actually hilarious. Okay,
Damn
yeah,
it!
I get it now.
It's all in the way you say it. Well done. That made me laugh.
That's funny. Tolkien Brown, you wanna take this one?
Love you guys. Keep teaching, keep sharing the hidden knowledge. Well, we're just spitballing here with you guys and just yeah, this is so fun. This is how I want to spend my Friday night. So this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
absolutely.
yeah, thank you very much, Talking Brown. Because what we're gonna do, yeah, we're gonna try and we really appreciate people giving tips, but we also really appreciate just people watching. What one way that you can help for free is by teaching the algorithm that you enjoy this and help us reach more people. So if you just smash the like button or the dislike button, whatever but probably the like button, and you can
Preferably.
like write us a little comment in the main comments box because I know we're having fun in the this one, but this one then disappears and that's annoying. And then yeah, that's just the way that you can help us for free. Let adverts roll is another great one that you can. It's just every time you let an advert roll, it shows the algorithm and YouTube that you know
Mhm.
that you can help us for free. So that
Yeah,
you enjoy the
absolutely.
content and that you want to stay engaged. So yeah, we're gonna try and make it better. We want to make sure that the tech works. We're gonna try and do this more
Absolutely.
often. One
Yeah, yeah,
if Luke can quit his day job and be a full-time history raider of the past,
yep.
then we're really gonna start to
I'm getting
run.
very close to that. I either I'm gonna quit or they're gonna fire me because when I hand in my travel schedule for this fall, my boss is gonna look at me and he's gonna go, "How do you think that you're gonna be able to continue to work here?" Because
Be
it's
like,
like,
right.
yeah, it's like on Thursday, I go to Oaxaca, this coming Thursday, and
Yeah.
then in September, I go to Peru for 2 weeks, and then October, I go to Egypt for 2.5 weeks, and then when I leave Egypt, I have to be in Guatemala 36 hours later for another trip, and then I have a trip, then I have a December Olmec tour that I'm doing, and then I have a January Egypt tour. So
Yeah, you ain't gonna I mean, even and then
they're
that's
gonna
that's
fire me.
difficult for English. I mean, we get a lot of holidays as English people,
Mhm.
but I know as American people, you guys don't get a lot of holiday at all.
Oh,
So
we work. Work, work, work,
you
work, work.
work, 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 work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a joke that's like, when an American travels to Italy and he asks an Italian, "Oh, like, what do you do?" The Italian says, "Oh, well, I do this, and I like to cook, and I dance with my wife, and do this and that." And then they ask the American, "What do you do?" And he tells them about his boring finance job. It's such American culture just to work, work, work,
I
work.
got my American friends were like teasing me yesterday of sending me this meme for like 4th of July being like, sucks that you have to go to work tomorrow. Ha ha ha. And I was just like, yeah, but I don't mind because we get like 20 days off a year. So sorry that you miss out on that. Damn. And then they're like, oh.
Yeah, we don't get anything off. It's horrible.
But anyway, so yeah, you're gonna be hyper busy. So yeah,
Hopefully I can.
let's encourage you to quit your job and do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and by you guys watching and super
It
chats,
helps. It
super
really
chats, we're always
helps.
gonna take a segment at the end of these, because sometimes like the purpose of a super chat is you can leave something in the regular comment section. I click those, whenever you guys see me looking down, I'm reading the comments the whole time. We don't ignore them, and I always put up regular comments. But at the end, we take a moment to read these because sometimes you can try to send an email, this, that, and the other. But this is a way that if you have something that you want to say or something, it's absolutely going to be seen.
Oh,
And we really appreciate it, and this helps out tremendously. Okay, so seriously, America? Question mark. I feel that. Thank you so much for the $10 donation. I volunteer to be tech support. I live in Houston, so easy to get to San Antonio for streams. I studied geophys at University of Colorado. I
nice.
help with production, live researcher, etc. Hmm.
I mean,
Do I
maybe
want to?
when
Do I
we
want
up
to take
our
that next step?
when we
Yeah,
up
yeah,
our production scale, but also you can help us. We can get like remote, remote tech support. We don't really even need moderators because everyone's so nice in this community,
yeah,
and like we've
yeah,
got a super nice audience, and everyone, on the whole, is pretty sound.
yeah.
Um,
I,
but
I
thank
think,
you
I
very
think,
much for wanting
yeah,
to help.
I think as far as like, we're maybe not at the point where we have to put out like community guidelines or whatever, but as long as you're nice, when I see people spam, like I've seen one guy spam, 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 I'm going to remove that comment because it's about curating a good community.
Yeah.
And, so as long as everybody's just nice, we'll be fine. But yeah,
That's
man,
nice.
send me an email, just lukecaverns@gmail.com. Since you live nearby, that would be optimal. So I'm open to talking about it. But thank
Yeah.
you so much for the super chat. Decky69, thank you so much for the donation. And you want to read this one, Johanna? I think this is our last one for the
Yeah,
day.
it's the old magic doesn't work anymore is very interesting. I've never heard that one before. We're talking about the Akhenaten quote. What are
Uh,
your thoughts to its meaning? I'm gonna note that down because I want to research this because I hadn't heard that Akhenaten quote or translation. So it's a very interesting translation because I mean you could take it many ways. You could take it like, he's talking about religion or metaphoricals, it depends on I need to see it in context of what he's talking about. It's like when you take a Bible quote and just pluck it out and try and use it.
yeah,
You don't know the context if you don't know
that's
the
my
original
biggest pet peeve
translation.
about,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's my biggest pet peeve as well. Someone taking it and then using like half of it and then trying to say it.
yeah,
Like, nah, in context, they were talking about sheep shearing. It's nothing to do with. But I do have an inkling if, that if Akhenaten could be very well referencing um old sites that like don't work. Considering that um there are sites like Dendera, which is a new kingdom site, and it's where the Dendera light bulb is,
mhm.
sort of under the temple. And that's a temple when I was talking about when you seed from an older temple. So Dendera is a new kingdom site, but when they were digging into they were doing some excavating a couple years ago into the floor, and they found the top of a huge marble columns
Oh,
underneath
wow, really? Wow.
Dendera. Yeah, and these ancient, and we're talking like, yeah, like a big, huge one-piece marble column that is buried under the corner of the floor in Dendera. But also at Dendera, there are uh, reliefs on the wall. And when I asked our tour guide, Yusef Awan from Uncharted X's tours, he said this is a very detailed imagery and it's instructions on how to activate the building. And I was like, that's weird. It was like it looked like an image of the temple, and it had these like swirls in different arrangements in the different images, and it's how to activate a building. And
Interesting.
it sounds like a very physical thing with like sound or whatever. So whether that was spiritually activate it or whether that was functionally activate it or whatever. But yeah, so I like to think that the old magic doesn't work anymore. Maybe they'd lost the process by Akhenaten's time of learning how to activate sites, and
Very
that's
interesting.
that stuck with me. That imagery. I need to find my pictures of it. Again, something else to. We need to have like a kind of post show notes where everything we're like yapping about, some we can find.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's a note to do.
As far as my point of view, I really am not an expert at all on Akhenaten. I know that Akhenaten, I mean, the reason that he's so, special or famous is that he's the heretic king. I mean, he flipped Egypt up on its head. He tried to move the capital of Egypt to this area that was perfectly between Upper and Lower Egypt to the city that he called Aten. And the prophecy that he followed to be able to find that city with the sun rising between two mountaintops and creating the sun disk between the two horns imagery, like
Mhm.
that is, it's all, he's a very important king and there's a lot to know about him. And I honestly I just know that there's a lot to unpack there, and I have yet to dive
Yeah.
down to learn that much about Akhenaten.
You'll
So
see him in Egypt. It's so cool. He's the one pharaoh that looks really different. He's
yeah,
got
yeah.
a different aesthetic, different vibe. His whole religion was different. He was a great spiritual hippie guy, husband to Nefertiti,
Mhm, yeah. And
uh,
his
dad
son was.
To Tutankhamun.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, I'm trying to see if I have my chronology right here. They are before Ramses. Is that correct? Ramses the Great. I think they're like right before him. I don't know. That's got
Uh, yes, because no, wait, I'm trying to think of I did the timeline once. That was right down to Akhenaten, and then no, yes, right before because then Akhenaten dies out. No, Tutankhamun
mhm.
Gonna have to Google this before I embarrass myself. And then after Tutankhamun is the first Ramses.
It could
Who
be.
was who was before
I'm sure somebody in chat.
Ramses the first? Let's have a look. Um, uh, or Ramses, the Egyptians. No, oh my gosh, it's
Jeremiah
very
said he's obviously, and he said he's handsome, but obviously an alien.
Now, do you know what? Why he looks so weird? I don't know why he looks so weird. Um, because obviously they always used to fit the exact same, Kim Kardashian cutout image of what they thought a pharaoh looked like.
Yeah.
And then he said, "I give you full permission to like depict me as I am, like go for it." But
Mhm.
because he was so like gave everyone such free reign, it kind of came out caricature-ish. So he looks more like a cartoon character than the other ones, but he's not big and buff and like serious. He looks more
Yeah.
like serene. He's got a little pot belly. He's kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, he said, show me unfiltered. I want the unfiltered Instagram picture. Thank you. And that's what, yeah. So we've got Titi. Oh, I'm getting the whole thing here. Middle Kingdom is New Kingdom. Amenhet. Gosh, there's some great names. I love the name. I love all the names. Tutmos, Amenhotep. We're getting down there. Akhenaten. Oh, and then after that, there was, yeah, Tutankhamun. And then Ramses the First. We were right. Yeah.
Somebody asked. Somebody asked, "What's that by my side?" I have been waiting so long for someone to ask.
Because you are. Oh, do you know what? I think as we're going to close because we need to come into land now.
Yeah,
I
we
was
do.
going to say, have you watched this week the Gladiator 2 trailer because it's just dropped?
Oh, I
You
didn't
supposed
know that I didn't know that it just dropped.
Okay, well then homework is to have a little look at the
We need
Gladiator
to do a
2.
movie review day.
We do. And actually I'm going to review we'll do rewatch Gladiator if you haven't. Everyone, this is homework for everyone by the way. Rewatch Gladiator and then go and see Gladiator 2 this month whenever it comes out. I mean, look at him. Luke's ready. He's ready. He's ready to
Oh,
go.
I'm ready.
He's
I'm
Can you
ready.
please go to the cinema like just like that? That'd be
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Gary from Nerdrotic, he and I are going to see Gladiator together. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, so I'm definitely gonna dress
Decky69
up
says
like
you
a Roman.
must wear that from now on, and I agree. Yeah, so I found out this week that Cash he hasn't fully seen Gladiator. I was like, I'm
No
sorry,
way.
you haven't fully seen Gladiator. We need to sort that out immediately and watch that before the new one.
Yes, totally agree.
So
Totally agree.
I want to caption this for the like social media. This is great. Oh yeah, and I forgot we were gonna do an episode where we like are in costume. So I need to sort out my like Plato
For
outfit or
Halloween.
something.
For Halloween.
For Halloween, we'll
We
do
gotta
a
do a Halloween
Halloween
episode.
100%, and we'll bring costumes. Luke's already getting in the vibe. This has been
Yep.
great, guys. We
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
come into
This
land
is our
because
longest episode for sure.
we've been going for 2 hours and it's late on a Friday night for me. So I've got to sleep,
All right,
Luke's
guys. Well, hey,
showing off his
thank you
gear.
all so much for a successful episode 4, I think.
Yeah, episode
Yeah,
4,
we're
Raiders of the Past.
slowly improving. I'm learning to be a better host slowly over time. So, well, hey, do we have an outro yet?
Every time we also need to work out how we're ending it because every time we're just like, see you later. And then we had like a catchphrase and then we both forgot it. That's how brilliant we are at this. So sorry about that.
Will do.
Keep
I will wear this from now on.
I
All
say
right.
my channel, I say happy hunting because we're all ancient history hunters in my eyes. So
Happy hunting.
happy hunting.
Well, yeah, we'll have to come up with something. Well, hey, I want to thank all you guys. This was really fun. I love doing this. And we will be posting at some point again when the next episode is. It'll be on a Monday.
Yeah,
I
it'll
can't
be in
tell
the
you
next
exactly
following
what day of the month.
couple of Mondays. We'll give you guys a heads up maybe next time. That's also something we can do.
All right, you guys. Happy hunting. Love you
Happy
guys.
hunting.
And